For so many human beings, this mind has become a misery manufacturing machine.
Once you're above the intellectual process, suffering is finished in your life because all suffering is manufactured there in your logical mind. When you're into your intellect, when you're stuck in your intellect, you are a non-stop suffering human being.
Suffering is not inevitable, suffering is self-created.
This moment, you can make anything out of yourself. You can make joy out of yourself, you can make suffering out of yourself.
So we need to understand this. People are coming to conclusions by looking at certain limitations. For example, the psychiatry and other things. People like Freud, they have come to many conclusions about humanity which are utterly nonsensical. It is just that because they studied only sick people, they never got to study a Buddha, isn't it? They studied only mentally sick people. With that, they're making conclusions about whole humanity. It's not so. Now, if you can create suffering, you can also create something else, isn't it? Do you see who you are, whatever you may think you are right now, your personality, your identifications, all these things are fine. But fundamentally, if you're really alert and listening to me, you cannot sit here as a man or a woman. You can only sit here as a certain life energy, isn't it? Yes? If you're aware, I'm a man, I'm a woman, that means you're not here totally. Do you see your big identities just fall off so easily? If you don't pay attention to it, they fall off. If you get focused on something else, they fall off. So people are trying to experience this in many ways, playing a game, jumping off a mountain, singing a song, dancing, doing this, falling in love with somebody. These are all different ways that people are trying to get involved in something to such a point that they can forget all the other nonsense that they have created. Yes? But none of these things can you sustain for 24 hours of the day. Now, we are exploring a technology where you don't have to do anything and still be that way. Because if a certain state of being is related to a certain activity, nobody can maintain that activity 24 hours of the day, isn't it? Any kind of activity. Whether it is playing or singing or dancing or music or love or meditation, you cannot manage it for 24 hours of the day. It's not possible, not practical, isn't it? So that means, if you can create something for one moment, so you're able to create a certain sense of freedom from suffering for one moment. If you create one moment, can't you create one more moment? Can't you create one more? One more and one more and one more? That's the way you create your life. Fortunately, moments don't come at you in bunches, they're coming only one at a time, isn't it? Are they coming in bunches? Only one at a time. If you know how to make this moment blissful, you can live blissfully, isn't it? Now, suffering, please look at it and see, people are capable of suffering just about anything. Is it so? People are suffering their well-being, people are suffering their illness, people are suffering loneliness, people are suffering togetherness. Is it so? People are suffering poverty, people are suffering affluence, is it so? People are suffering discomfort, people are suffering comfort, is it so? So they are capable of suffering anything. So obviously, they are creating suffering. Yes? If you look at yourself, this life energy which you call as myself sometimes has been very blissful. Has it been joyful and blissful at certain times? Sometimes it's been absolute turmoil, sometimes peaceful, sometimes agony, sometimes ecstasy. Has it gone through all this? So it is capable of finding all these various expressions. So if it is capable of all this, if you had little mastery over your life energies, what would you instruct your life energies to be? Misery or joy? Joy. So people who have no control over their systems, they're talking suffering is inevitable. No, suffering is not inevitable. Suffering is self-created. If you are aware, if you take your body into control, if you just have little mastery over your body, at least 15 to 25, 30% of your life and destiny will be in your hands, please see. Just your body, physical mastery. Is it so? If you take your mind into your control, if you have mastery over your mind, 40 to 60% of your life will be in your control. If you take your life energies into your control, 100% of your destiny will be in your control. The very way you live and the very way you die will be decided by you.
I know the Eastern minds have also absorbed this in a horribly distorted way, but right now if you told your friend or your relative, I'm going to the ashram for 3 days, they would become very kind towards you and ask, why, what went wrong? Something must be wrong with your life. You're going to the ashram to heal a wound, to solace yourself. Something must be really wrong with your life, or you must be too old for life. Otherwise, why would you go to an ashram? So this has crept into this culture also. Essentially, if you're alive only in parts, or if you're partially alive, to be partially alive is a terrible torture. Many of you have been through these science classes, I'm sure you opened up frogs and cockroaches, did you? They were nice, lively beings, but you opened them up because you wanted to find their heart and liver and kidney. Half alive, being half alive is torture. Have you seen this? Always being half alive is torture. This is the torture that a large segment of humanity is going through right now because they are half alive. Only one part of them has become alive, only their physicality and mentality has become alive. The rest of it is yet to become alive. Half-alive people will suffer everything. They will suffer ignorance, they will suffer education, they will suffer poverty, they will suffer affluence, they will suffer being alone, they will suffer being in a relationship. If they are not married, they suffer. If they're married, if they don't have children, they suffer that. As if children, if they are there, they can come and bite you. They do. No children, what are you suffering? But that also they suffer. Just show me one thing that human beings are not suffering right now. Just show me one aspect of life that human beings are not suffering right now. They're suffering just about anything, not just life. They're even suffering death before it happens. That which is and that which is not, everything they suffer. You are not suffering loneliness, you are not suffering company, you are not suffering money, you are not suffering poverty. What you're suffering is, you're half alive. You're desperately trying to make yourself fully alive through money, through drink, through sex, through going on a trek, coming to the ashram. In so many ways, you're somehow trying to make yourself fully alive, which is yet to happen fully. Here and there you feel a burst of aliveness, but again it ebbs down. So, when people are constantly half alive, pleasure becomes an important part of your life, very important part of your life. Without it, you cannot exist. Pleasure becomes paramount in your life when you're only half alive, when physicality is all that you know. Pleasure becomes of immense importance in your life. If you become fully alive, you will become so blissful, joyful, ecstatic without reason, bursts of ecstasy within you without any reason. It's almost embarrassing. Now, the thought of pleasure just evaporates. Looking for a drink, looking for some kind of pleasurable thing just evaporates out of your mind because you're fully alive. When you're fully alive, pleasure disappears. When you're half dead, pleasure is an important thing.
You know Charles Darwin? You heard of Charles Darwin? 200 years ago born, but about 150 years ago, he said, "You were all monkeys." Not me, I'm not saying that. He said that. "You were all monkeys, your tail fell away, you became human." You know the story. When you were a monkey, you did not aspire to be human. Nature just pushed you on. You did not choose. But once you become human, if you want to evolve from here on, you have to consciously evolve, otherwise there is no other way. When I say you have to consciously evolve, what you call as human is not an established state, it's a flux. This moment, you can be godlike, next moment you can be a brute. You have seen with yourself, this moment you're wonderful, next moment you're nasty, next moment you're beautiful, next moment you're ugly. Is this not happening to you? So, a human is not a being, he's a becoming. He's an ongoing process. Nothing is fixed. You can be whichever way you want to be. This freedom that you have, that you're not fixed like every other creature on this planet, if you're aware, this is the greatest benediction because you can make yourself whatever you want. If you're unaware, this is the greatest curse. Humanity is right now suffering this freedom. Humanity is not suffering bondage as people are saying. Humanity is suffering its freedom. If your life was also fixed like every other creature, you would have gone about without any stress, you didn't have to do yoga, isn't it? Isn't it so? If your life was fixed like every other creature on this planet, you wouldn't be stressed. Only because it is not fixed, you can be anything you want, anything, just about anything can happen in your mind. This is why the stress, isn't it? See, suppose a tiger is born. A tiger is not sitting and worrying how to become a good tiger. Just get enough food, he will become a good tiger. He is not worried, will I become a good tiger? Will I end up as a house cat? No such problems. You're born as a human being, but still how many things you have to do to be a good human being, and still you don't know where you belong, isn't it? Only in comparison with somebody you can say, compared to this person, I'm little better. By yourself you don't know where you belong, isn't it so? Isn't it so? Because what is human is not an established state. It is a possibility. It is not a fixed state. If this possibility has to be made use of, there is a whole system of understanding that needs to happen. Understanding the mechanics of how this life functions and what we can do with it. This mechanics, this technology, this science, we are referring to as yoga.
You've heard of a word called Buddha? If I say Buddha, probably you always think of Gautama the Buddha. Gautama is not the only Buddha, that's not his name. He became a Buddha. There have been thousands of Buddhas and there still are. What Buddha means is, Bu means buddhi or the intellect. Da means dada, one who is above. One who is above his intellect is a Buddha. Once you're above the intellectual process, suffering is finished in your life, because all suffering is manufactured there in your logical mind. When you are into your intellect, when you are stuck in your intellect, you are a non-stop suffering human being. Wherever you put, you have a way of creating some kind of suffering. Your fears, your anxieties, your tensions, your stress. Just see, people are capable of suffering just about anything. Yes? Isn't it so? People are capable of suffering just about anything in the world, please see. This is the nature of the intellect. Once you are into the intellect, this is how life is. If you are below the intellect, you won't suffer so much. Animals don't suffer as much as you suffer. Physical things, if they're taken care of, they're quite okay. They don't have the kind of suffering that human beings know, isn't it? So if you're below the intellect, you don't suffer so much. If you're above the intellect, you're a Buddha. If you're below the intellect, maybe we can call you Buddha. If you're in the intellect, non-stop suffering. So, to avoid suffering, people are inventing many ways to go below the intellect. Excessive eating, alcohol, excessive indulgence in physical pleasures. These are all the ways you're trying to avoid the torment of the intellect for some time. You get drunk and you feel good for a few hours, but then life will catch up with you with more intensity. It won't let you go. Now, this being which was below the intellect somehow evolved into the intellect. The only way out for this is to evolve beyond the intellect. So, the fundamentals of yoga, the technology is how to go beyond this. So, how to do it now? Subjective technologies cannot be explored in uncommitted atmospheres. You need a very committed, focused atmosphere, otherwise it will not be in your grasp. It's not a teaching, it's a method. To implement a method, you need to be in a certain way, in a certain level of commitment, in a certain level of receptivity, otherwise it doesn't work. Because, see, now if you go into your chemistry laboratory, you take this chemical, if you put it into it, something happens. But if you're not willing to put it into it, if you sit here and think and think and think, what will this do, what will that do, you will come to all kinds of wrong conclusions. Till you put it there, you won't know. Maybe it'll explode in your face, but till you put it there, you will not know what it is about. But now, you are the chemical, you are the chemist, and you are the experimental process. Everything is you. Now you need a different kind of laboratory, otherwise it doesn't work. If it was objective, we could have just written a book and given it to you. But because it's subjective, you have to be taken step by step, because it's a completely different dimension of perception and experience altogether. But is it possible for me? It is possible for every human being. Internally, all of us are equally capable. We are not capable in different ways. All of us are capable of joy, isn't it? Yes? If you have been joyful for one moment, that means you're capable of joy, isn't it? It is just that you're unable to stay there. That's the whole thing. There is no human being on the planet who's never been joyful. Every human being has been joyful at some point. That means he's capable of joy. It is just that he's unable to stay there. So he needs a technology as to how to maintain the atmosphere within himself. It's possible.
Does anything worry you? Do you have bad days? This question is from Bhashan.
First of all, I don't have days. Because the days are only in your memory. In your reality, there's only now, isn't it? Yes or no? The problem right now is human intellect. See, of all the gadgets that you have, I know he's looking into his favorite gadget. What are you, Apple or Samsung you? Okay. No, because it's a religion, so I'm asking. It's almost like asking, are you Hindu, Muslim, Christian, what are you? Are you Apple, Samsung or BlackBerry? We're almost getting there, isn't it? So, human intellect, of all the gadgets that you have, even including the Apple, human mind is the most sophisticated gadget on this planet. Do you agree with me? Every other gadget has come out of this. But we are busy looking into the iPhone, completely missing the eye. Right now, for most human beings, let me not use the word most, for too many human beings, this mind is not a miracle that it actually is. For so many human beings, this mind has become a misery manufacturing machine. All the misery, human misery on this planet, where is it manufactured? Madras? No, in your mind, isn't it? What should have been the greatest miracle, unfortunately has become a source of misery for human beings. Why is this so? There are two dimensions to your intelligence. One is perception, one is the penetration of your intelligence, another is the memory aspect of it. Because of the kind of education systems that you're suffering right now, which is 100% memory-based, all you have to do is memorize something, vomit it somewhere. Your idea of being intelligent right now has become purely memory-based. Tonight, today evening at the tea party, you don't have to know anything. You just have to surf the internet, pick up some facts about that 64, T64 galaxy that nobody knows about. You get some information and throw it around, people think you're smart. Because our whole idea of intelligence has become memory, unfortunately. Once you're dipping your hand into memory, your intelligence becomes very cyclical, because it's recycling the past in so many different ways. It looks smart for somebody who doesn't know that, otherwise it's just nonsense. Today we know a goddamn chip can record more than your brain can record. It is not intelligence. Memory is just a resource, it is not an intelligence. The nature of the intelligence and the purpose of human intellect is that it should be able to penetrate. But it has got such a huge backlog, it is identified with the memory in such a bad way, it has lost its penetration. It is like you have a knife. Intellect is like a knife, it can cut through anything. But now you have a knife where the apple is sticking. Now whatever you try to cut, it's not going to cut anything because there's a big apple sticking here. This is what has happened, a huge bank of memory is sticking to it and it's lost its penetration. This is a tremendous loss that's happened to humanity because of the nature of education systems that we have crafted. So the fundamental process of spiritual process is to sharpen this intellect in such a way that if you sit here, your memory does not influence you. Your intelligence is simply here, it sees everything just the way it is. If this doesn't happen to you, your intellect will become the source of your suffering. You will see educated people are definitely suffering more than the uneducated on this planet, isn't it so? They're also causing much more suffering. The planet is suffering mainly because of educated people, not because of uneducated people. Yes or no? The very life of the planet is being threatened by the educated, not by the uneducated, because it is a completely memory-based education. It is not intelligence-based education. We need to shift this. If the education systems are not going to shift it, as individual people, you must shift.
Sadhguru, if the creation is perfect, and the Creator has done such a good job on us, as you say, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do we need to depend on somebody's compassion to exist here?
So, if Creator had done a good job on us, why there is so much suffering in the world? Why we need to depend on other people's compassion and understanding to exist here? This is like… It happened once. A little boy came home with a $10 bill in Ohio. A little boy came home with a $10 bill. His mother asked, he said, "I found it." His mother asked, "Luke, did you really find it? Are you sure?" He said, "Sure, ma'am, I even saw the man looking for it." Why there's so much misery? If this is a perfect job, it's such a perfect job that it gives you the opportunity to be whichever way you wish to be. If creation had not given you the necessary opportunity to be what you wish to be, then there would be no possibilities, isn't it? Then there would be no such thing as liberation. So why create a bondage and then liberation? Why couldn't you be liberated? Then there would be no creation. Only because there is creation, now the possibility of going beyond that. Now, in animal nature and in other forms of life that you see around you, every kind, there is not much possibility. The possibility is just to survive, procreate, carry on with life and die one day. Because there is not much possibility, there is not much misery either. You don't see other creatures of the planet suffering like human beings. Their suffering is purely physical. If they are physically harmed, they are in pain. Even in pain, they do not know the kind of suffering that a human being knows. Human being knows this suffering not because creation gave this suffering to you. Creation just gave you the freedom to make whatever you wish to out of yourself. You're making suffering out of yourself, or a large population of the world has decided to make suffering out of themselves. That is their choice. Physical realities sometimes are comfortable, sometimes are not comfortable. That is so. We have been given the necessary intelligence to create necessary comfort for ourselves. That's not an issue really. If we have no problems with each other, creating comfort for all the population in the world is not a problem. It's not at all a big problem, really. Simply because we have inner problems, simply because this freedom, which should have been a benediction, has become a curse upon humanity. Right now, what human beings are suffering is not their bondage, they're suffering their freedom. If you suffer your bondage, it's all right. But if you suffer your freedom, that's tragedy. Right now, human beings are unfortunately suffering their freedom. This moment, you can make anything out of yourself. You can make joy out of yourself, you can make suffering out of yourself. What to do if 50% of the people or 90% of the people are choosing to make misery out of themselves? That's not creation's fault. Just gave you the freedom so that you could go beyond. Once you have come as human, You are not trapped anymore. Other creatures are trapped in their own instincts. Beyond that, they cannot think. You have instincts for survival, but still you have the possibility of going beyond these instincts. If you don't choose to go beyond, that means still enough suffering has not touched you because it's unfortunate in the world that very few people transcend out of their intelligence. Most people have to be thrashed by life, only then they will transcend. Only then they will think of going beyond, otherwise, no. I don't know if you're aware of this, Luke, you came early, but in India, if you if you tell somebody that I'm living in an ashram, they will ask you, why, what went wrong, what happened to your life? So they believe only after something really goes wrong, you'll go to the ashram, okay? Because most people's intelligence is such, because they kept their brains in cold storage, they think they're going to use it in future. So, they can only seek anything beyond when something really goes wrong with their life. Till then, even if something really goes wrong, they will only pray for a better life next time. Now, you don't have to depend on anybody's compassion or understanding. The whole world can live under the umbrella of your compassion and your understanding. I would like to see that you stand up that way, that the world lives under your compassion and understanding. You don't live in other people's compassion and understanding. If you have any dignity, that's how you should live, isn't it? Isn't it so?